Hello. Today we are going to conduct an interview with Hult International Business School. I am Hye Yeon, the Korean representative in charge of today's session. Before we begin, I will briefly explain the new updates to our MBA program. Starting in 2025, 5 new tracks will be added to the MBA. In the middle, you will see circles representing the 5 tracks: strategy, marketing, entrepreneurship, finance, and analytics. If you choose one of these tracks, it will be indicated on your diploma. Additionally, you can choose an MBA track and a dual degree, allowing you to earn 2 degrees over a total of 18 months. Through this, you can study with a focus that suits your interests and enjoy various learning opportunities. This is actually a simple update so far. If you would like more detailed information after this, you can inquire about our brochure from Hult or contact me directly. Now, let's move on to the highlight of today, the interview. The person joining us for the interview this time is Mr. Choi Sung-an, who, as previously mentioned, has been with Hult up to the dual degree. He completed the Hult MBA and dual degree in the Business Analytics program and is currently actively working in the field. Today, we plan to hear various stories about your school days, career choices, and work experience in the United States. We will also ask how your experience at Hult has influenced your career. Now let's start the interview with Mr. Choi Sung-an. Hello, Mr. Choi.
Hello, nice to meet you.
First, to get to know you better, could you please introduce yourself? Could you briefly explain your educational background or career?
Yes, sure. Nice to meet you. My name is Choi Sung-an. I attended middle and high school in Canada, and then I went to university in Japan. I initially enrolled there in 2007, went to the military, and then graduated in 2013. So after graduating in 2013, I started my career in Japan. I embarked upon my career at a consulting firm in the early stages of my professional journey, working with companies affiliated with Toyota and Mitsubishi. I conducted management consulting on new business strategies, overseas business, development, and marketing strategies. Then I moved to a startup. The first startup I joined was a Sweden-based startup, a beverage brand startup, somewhat like Allbirds or those kind of brands. It was a brand that made smoothie products. And in Scandinavia, that is Northern Europe, the brand was already #1, but it had never launched in Asia. So I joined as the first Asian member and led the launch in Asia. And then while working at the company, it was acquired by a large Finnish corporation. So I found a lot of appeal in startups. And then in Japan, while working at a startup, the company I worked for was based on AI, a SOX product company. So at that company. So now I worked from opportunity to launch at the company. And the company did quite well and went public in Japan. There is something called Mothers on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. And we got listed on Mothers. And then I am one of them. I was thinking about what to do with my career. The first was to get an MBA. And the second was I was thinking about starting a separate business tomorrow. Since I had a consulting background, I received offers for projects where I could earn as much as someone else's annual salary in just 3 months of consulting. But I decided to put that aside and go all for an MBA. So I chose San Francisco and started my MBA at Hult. The reason I chose San Francisco was I had a great admiration for Silicon Valley and such. So even though I didn't know anyone or have any acquaintances there, I decided to go and just dive in. So while playing the Hult NBA, from the very first day, I think I worked hard on networking. I really put a lot of effort into networking from day one. I think I attended about 3 to 5 networking events a day. As I did that, I started to get to know some people locally. And within less than a month after starting school, I received an internship offer. Of course, it was unpaid. Unpaid internship, unpaid internship, unpaid internship. But even if I had been paid, it wouldn't have mattered. Legally, due to visa issues, I couldn't have been paid anyway. So I started the internship unpaid. Yes, that was very helpful. And locally, it became an opportunity to make the name Sunny known to others. So while doing that, I had the thought that I wanted to stay in the US even after graduation. Adengi, look. As you may know, it's really difficult to get a visa in the US, and it's also hard to find a company that will sponsor you, especially in Silicon Valley, because there are so many talented locals in Silicon Valley. There's not much reason to go out of their way to hire foreigners and sponsor their visas. And because visa consulting is expensive, knowing that situation, I decided to pursue a master's in business analytics to get the STEM OPT. Yes, since they give an additional year for STEM OPT, I prepared to receive that while working full-time. I received an internship offer and worked at a local accelerator called MindBridge while completing my master's.
So you chose the NBA, right? Since one of the two options was the NBA, but was there a particular reason you chose the cult NBA?
First, IQ. What kind of song is this album? It's an excuse, but I didn't have much time to study for the GMAT or GRE. I'm also a workaholic, and I often worked late while working at the company. But I wanted to go to the NBA, so I applied to several places. Among them, the places I got accepted to at that time, it was a cult. Hong Kong University at the time. But for me, even in Hong Kong, Buye, now using Myrtil, now Merchers, his own slight power of identity packaged and drifting in his old past. I think that MBA or other educational programs can all be taken online. I tend to do that. So I thought the quality of classes and such would be similar for MBAs. But the reason I ultimately chose Hult and San Francisco was because I prefer a global environment. And since I've lived abroad since I was young, I prefer something more free than being too confined. And I could also gain a global network. And in San Francisco, there's also that I was very attracted to the advantages that could be found there. So I chose Hult. I chose SF.
So in terms of your preference for Silicon Valley or other options, San Francisco was the best fit for you, right? At Hult, we also have a rotation program. Did you perhaps not participate in the rotation to other campuses? Did you not participate? Did you ever think about wanting to do it?
No, not at all. My goal was to settle in Silicon Valley. Yes, so from day one, of course, I was very active at school. I also participated in clubs at school. I even created the VTNP club and was involved in it. I made a lot of friends and did a lot of networking within the school, but I focused more on external networks, specifically the Silicon Valley network. That's why I attended more external networking events. Yes. And I never considered going to another country.
Then, regarding the external network, when we discuss job preparation or finding a job later, it would be great if you could explain it in more detail. It would be good if you could elaborate on that. So, before you applied, although you were a workaholic and didn't have time to study for exams like the GRE or GMAT, what was your biggest concern? Or if you had any concerns, how did you resolve them? It would be helpful to know.
Talking about concerns going to the MBA.
That's right.
First of all, I didn't want to go to school for 2 years. Thank you. So I was definitely looking at 1-year programs. So 1-year program. I looked for places I could go to as much as possible. CJETs have a cook that cooks, or where I could go without studying. Because if I had to study, the schedule would get delayed and delayed. So I was considering places I could go to right now, or places that didn't require high scores at the moment, or currently.
Then, since San Francisco is quite an expensive area, with Silicon Valley there, you can't ignore these aspects. Were you worried about the financial aspects, or how did you solve these issues? Could you briefly explain? Could you share that with us?
Of course. First of all, in terms of budget, living alone in San Francisco is expensive. So there are usually 2 things people do. The first is to share if you're living within San Francisco 19.3. Of course, even if you live around there, it's good to share. The second is not within the city, to move slightly outside the city and live there. I had many friends living there. Some friends lived in Berkeley. Hello. And some lived in Redwood City, and they commuted. There were friends who focused on that. So I thought living within San Francisco City was the most important, and having time alone, living with others is nice, but I just wanted to be alone. I found a really small place, so it was enough just to have a place to sleep. Anyway, as someone who came out of the military, yes, I could sleep on the street too. I didn't actually sleep on the street though. Yes, with that kind of mindset, it was a small room, but it was a place where I could be alone, so I lived there. And also for living expenses, a little bit frugal, but when it comes to spending on the house,
there were weeks when I spent almost zero once. $0. How did you manage meals and such?
I mentioned there are a lot of networking events, right? Well, they usually have catering there, but I didn't go there just for that. Absolutely not. I didn't go there with that intention. But since it's there, when you're there, it's awkward to just stand around. So you end up talking to people and eating, and then you're full. So there's no need to eat separately. And that's how it went. Yes, I didn't spend much money. I saved a lot more than I thought. Yes.
Then these connecting events or things like that played a very important role. It seems to have had a significant impact on your parents' daily life or work.
It had a huge impact. And while interning, there were times when I had lunch with the employees eating together at the company. And I eat 2 meals a day. So if I have lunch, that's 1 meal taken care of. And for the other meal, there's a big supermarket nearby. and they sell in large quantities there, the food itself. So even if I go to Subway, the portions are big too. If I buy once, it lasts for 2 or 3 days, or 2 or 3 meals. So I can eat like that. I know it's about saving money, but of course, going out with friends and dining out, you can save if you want to.
Thank you for the good feedback. In fact, just going to the US itself costs a lot of living expenses. Many people worry about this, but in fact, there are ways to save money without making a lot of effort. Right. Yes, right. Best. So I think many people will feel less worried about this part. Then, this time, let me ask you about the classes within Hult. Could you share some insights about the class content overall? Or perhaps share your experience with the classes, since Hult has many group projects. If there's a memorable episode related to a group project, could you tell us about it?
Yes, at school, what I liked about Hult was that we changed teams every time to work on projects. It's very difficult. It's uncomfortable. And it's hard. But it really helps a lot in society. And also, when we work at a company, we don't get to choose our teams, right? So having those experiences a lot at Hult and this variety, for example, when forming a team in Korea, even though they are different people, they are still Koreans. So culturally and in many other aspects. There are many matches. However, in the case of Hult, it's really with people from different countries, different nations, or with friends from different cultures. Because I ended up forming a team, understand new cultures, accept them flexibly, and train a lot in passing opinions and listening. If you think this is something you dislike, you might really dislike it. But the school doesn't have a huge impact on your life. You can afford to fail at school. If you fail outside of school, it might affect our promotion or something like that. What is it? It affects your career, but at school, failing doesn't have such an impact. So having the opportunity to fail and figure out how to overcome it is truly indeed really a great opportunity. I think this is definitely the biggest advantage.
That's right. In fact, when it comes to Hult, practical learning is the most added. It's the main topic, and in this aspect, practical learning seems to be evident. In fact, if I especially want to work in the US, since the US is a place where people from various races and countries gather, it becomes a process where you can practice working with cultures or people you may dislike or are not familiar with almost forcibly. As you mentioned, if I fail here, or even if I fail to establish a good relationship with my teammates, as you mentioned, it doesn't have a significant impact on my actual life. Instead, by failing and getting back up repeatedly, I learn how to overcome those aspects when I actually enter society, which seems to be a direction we pursue a lot at Hult. Now, in the United States, when it comes to finding a career, of course, as you mentioned, you attended many connecting events, huh? But besides that, how was the process of finding a job? What kind of support did you receive from the school? And we also have a well-organized career team, right? Could you share how you felt about the role of the career coach?
Yes. First of all, at the school, they hold career fairs and such. So there are quite a few good companies that come to these events, especially since many local companies attend at those all places. And now many of us are people who have never written a CV or engaged in job hunting locally, such as in your area. And so the choice of words and the way of presenting oneself is quite different from writing a resume in Korea. So I started doing that. And if I had been alone, I would have struggled a lot. But with the help of a career coach and also some help from seniors, among whom there was an alumnus who worked at Google. Yes, at the time they were working there. So I asked that friend to take a look at my CV. So I did this. And since I did this kind of work, I asked how I could best present it. And for example, when I was in, where was it? When I worked in Japan, the work I did there was perceived differently from the actual roles in the local context. People understood it differently. Yes, yes, that in such cases, instead of writing the title like this, it's better to write it like that. Or presenting the content in a way that resonates more locally, like this. Or well, things honestly like that. CV polishing. And also for career assistance. And LinkedIn is also very important. I am still actively engaged on LinkedIn and how to present on myself on LinkedIn, these aspects as well. I think I received a lot of support. And that's right, actually. But ultimately, all the activities and efforts are my responsibility. They don't do it for me. So they only support us, but we have to do it. Anyway, the things we do.
Even though the school has a well-organized career team and such career events, since we are MBA students, no one comes to us. We have to reach out ourselves. We have to seek out and attend activities. And when I met with an alumnus before, they emphasized this point. So I often share this with other students when we talk. You have to reach out yourself. No one, unlike when we were in high school or middle school, teachers or professors don't bring opportunities to us.
That's right. By taking action, we gain so much more. And anyway, what I need to consider is there are many friends from schools with great backgrounds around our school. Thank you. And we are foreigners. Since we are foreigners now, we have to compete with them. And how we win in that competition is actually on the ground, how to do that. We need to figure it out through activities. And often the experiences or resumes we have from other countries aren't well received. Yes, that's right. Therefore, I think it's really important to quickly do something like an internship, even if it's unpaid, to verify and or prove myself locally. Because when I look at people from our alma mater and my friends too, some went to famous companies initially, but many went to other companies first and then moved to Tesla or Rivian. Even my alumni, should I call them alumni? Friends who worked on projects with me at Howard. That's why friends who come to Hult have high potential, are good at their work, and utilize what they learned at Hult so they can build such careers well. But even these friends, they go through such trial and error. And in my view, this trial and error is due to not being able to verify ourselves locally. If you spend too much time only at school, the time to verify yourself extends. It's important to go locally and prove as quickly as possible that we can live and work there.
Yes, that's right. In fact, as a foreigner, there will be difficult aspects wherever you go, especially as an experienced professional. There seem to be many more areas that need to be proven while attending school, even if it's tough externally. And of course, studying will be difficult too. It's very important to take the time to attend events and meet people to adapt yourself to this system. I understand that you have written a book. Of course, I have received stories as well. But could you briefly tell us about this book? Could you briefly introduce the book to prospective employees watching, or to our alumni, or to juniors?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to explain the background before talking about the book. The company I work for locally is an accelerator called MindBridge, and I worked there for about 5 years. During that time, I served as the Asia General Manager. I was responsible for expanding the company in Asia, and this involved supporting and investing in startups, essentially the pioneers of innovation. So I believe that the work I do is ultimately about innovating and subsequently changing the future. I am working in the most highly advanced industry. And while working here, the things I've learned are ultimately related to innovation. Meanwhile, I'm working as a co-CEO at a company called 2080 28 Ventures. And in doing so, we work a lot with government agencies and large corporations. We also work extensively with startups. In this process, within this ecosystem, whether it's the startup ecosystem or the innovation ecosystem, thank you. Open innovation is becoming a very important pillar. This is what it means. Previously, large corporations would spend on internal R&D to secretly develop technology and then commercialize it to introduce to the market. They still do this, and it was the main approach. But if they only do it this way, nowadays there are too many new technologies emerging: AI, blockchain, quantum computing, and so on. For large corporations, to lead these technologies alone, it has become an impossible situation. Therefore, how to address this is a question all of concern, is by developing new technologies and collaborating quickly. That's what we call open innovation. Literally by opening up door through collaboration, investment and such, by working with startups or research labs, we ensure the continuity of our company. And indeed, open innovation is undoubtedly one of the strategies that makes this possible. In fact, this book focuses on that content. 2, 3, sin. So especially the concept of open innovation has been around for about 15 years. Has it been a bit longer? And now, this term is being used quite a lot in our industry these days. However, in Korea, and also it hasn't really taken root yet, and there weren't many related books. So we ended up writing this book together with other co-authors. This book primarily includes how to utilize open innovation with many success and failure cases. So rather than just discussing the concept, we tried to create the book in a way that it can be practically used while working.
Actually, I also came to know and hear about the term open innovation through you. It was a very new concept to me. Although companies do collaborate with each other, I wondered if large companies would prefer to discover innovations from the start with other companies, firms, or research labs. But actually, since the world is changing so rapidly these days, it seems like this approach is the right one. So it was actually a new concept for me as well, Ate. And when I first saw it, it felt very refreshing. At that time, during our alumni meeting, when the content was shared again, I listened very attentively. It was too noisy, so today, I originally intended to keep it short, but it seems it was longer than expected. Then, I'll ask just one last question. Do you have any advice or message for those considering applying to Hult?
First of all, whether it's Hult or anywhere else, the most important thing is that you have the will to do it. That's the most important thing. And through this, I don't think there's an answer to be found. They don't give you the answer here. In any case, it's our turn to find the answer, but think of an MBA as getting some help with the materials to find the answer. And of course, each individual has different directions they want to take in life. If what you consider important are the things I mentioned earlier, then Hult would be a great place for you.
Thank you. Then, today, I'll stop here with my questions, and through the conversation with our colleague, you were able to hear many valuable insights. The experiences you shared at Hult and the insights on working or preparing for a job in the US will likely be helpful to many people. Then I'll say my final goodbyes. But before that, thank you. I'll briefly explain about our application process, and then we'll conclude. Unfortunately, our first round of applications has ended. However, the second round of applications is still open. For the second round, you can submit your online application by November, June 30, 2024, and if confirmed, is said by December 21st, you can receive the benefits or shown on the screen. The benefits for the second round include scholarships of up to 40% for a master's or MBA program. As mentioned, the GMAT and GRE are not mandatory, but GMAT and GRE scholarships are available only for the MBA program, offering scholarships ranging from 50% to 90% based on scores. Additionally, when applying for the second round, you can receive up to a 100% scholarship for a second master's degree. So those considering it should aim for the second round. Today's interview likely provided valuable information for broadening understanding of Hult and assisting many in their career choices. In the future, we plan to invite more colleagues for interviews, and we are very grateful to Mr. Choi Sung-an for starting us off. I think we heard the most interesting stories. Recently, I've been attending many master classes and similar explanations, and there are parts I don't understand, but still, wow. Mr. Choi Sung-an explained a lot about the parts I can use in real life, and it was really helpful. Instead of just saying that the quality is good, he provided truly practical insights. Based on his experiences, he spoke in a way that would help those considering applying or those currently enrolled to understand how they can gain a lot of insights on how to operate locally. Today, we'll stop here, but we would like to invite you again later for another topic. Would it be okay to request another interview then?
Anytime.
Got it. Thank you for sharing so much today. Then we'll conclude today's interview here.
Yes. Thank you.